Hi everyone. Today I'm showing some of the brushes I use when I do oil paintings and acrylic paintings. And they're kind of old and used, but yeah, they've definitely been used. So this is a Sable flat brush and this is a Bristle flat brush. I use sometimes natural brushes and sometimes I use synthetic brushes. And this is an example of a synthetic brush, and it's kind of stained, but you can see the shape of it there. And then this large one's a mop brush. This is a natural bristle brush in a flat shape, and this is a bristle brush in a mop shape. And I'll show how I use these. This is a round brush. It's kind of bent on top. That happens sometimes if it's stored in a jar when it's wet. They should be stored. I'll show a little bit about how I store them. This is called a deerfoot brush. It kind of looks like the hoof of a deer. All right, here's a jar I store dry brushes in. And okay, so here's a few more. This is actually called I think it's a Mottler brush. I use it for varnishing. And then I've got a couple palette knives on the right side here. So I just have some old canvas paper that, as you see, I've already used before, but I thought I'd just use it again and show us some of my brushes at work. So this is the Sable brush, and it's really soft. It can do really fine details. And as you can see, it's kind of like a beveled marker. It will have a fat side, and then if you use it on the edge, it makes a thin line, and it's also good for getting into like nooks and little crevices in like tight areas of your painting. And then this is a bristle brush. So usually I use the Sable. It's really soft, natural hairbrush. And then there's a synthetic version, but I don't use it as much on canvas because the canvas has like a bumpy texture. So the tougher, stiffer bristle brushes usually work better to push the paint around on a canvas. So this is the round brush. So a smaller round brush is good for like this, making lines, but you could also use it to fill in, and especially if it were a larger size, because they all come in various sizes. So here I'm just showing that you can use a palette knife to paint as well. Sometimes people do what's called impasto painting, and then you could even take paint away by scraping with a knife. All right, so here's the fun one. Kind of looks like a makeup brush. So if you think about, okay, we'll try this one first, the Mop. This is the Deerhoof brush. And I think it would make good, like, greenery fur. It's kind of like a textured effect. You could also use it like a traditional brush. So it's going to make a really wide circular stroke that ends in a rounded shape. So here is the Mop brush, and I'm going to, I think, water this down. I think I dipped my brush in water so it would be really thin and runny. And it's really good for, like, well, as you can see, it's kind of soft. It's kind of like the brush you'd use when you put blush on your cheeks, and you wouldn't want it to look like war paint. You'd want it to be soft, and then it just does large swaths of color, like I said. All right, so I'm showing here just how I clean them. I definitely try to keep the paints on the end of the brush and not towards what's called the ferrule or the metal clamp, because, and here's just a bar of ivory soap. Now they sell soaps that are good for brushes, and a lot of times I use those because they're more conditioning, but in a pinch I'll use just as common soap like ivory soap. Okay, so this is the bristle brush in a flat shape. That's a common brush I use. Here's a larger one. That one's really kind of worn out, but it still works. Oh, I think this was one maybe I was going to show. Yeah, it's if a this is a damaged brush. So as you can see, it was stored with like when it's wet, or if it gets paint dried in near the ferrule, then it's gonna splay all the hairs of the brush, and it's not going to work very well. All right, so after I wash brushes, I lay them flat to dry so that the shape will stay good, and I don't want if there is any residue paint, I don't want it to dry going into the ferrule. Once the brushes are dry, I can store them with the tips up in my jar. And I have seen some people even store their wet brushes upside down hanging. So that's also an option. Anyway, I hope this was useful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below.